Well, this Phala report by the Independent Parliamentary Panel is going to be tabled in the National Assembly on the 6th of December. That is next week, Tuesday. MPs will then vote on whether to adopt the recommendations.
We have set aside the 6th of December for consideration of the report by the National Assembly. The role of the National Assembly pertaining to this report is articulated in the rules. The House will consider the report, its findings and recommendations, and adopt a resolution through a simple majority vote, whether a further action by the House is necessary or not.
Well, panel chair, that's the former Chief Justice Sandile Ncala, says it's not their duty to call the hawks. He says their mandate was to interrogate the information handed to them by the National Assembly.
There is just one matter which I really need to respond to because it stems from a perception. I don't normally respond to what appears on television or the media because it's not my job to do that. But I do want to make this clear. Someone went on television and said, if this panel does not call the hawks or call what, it would not have done its job. Let me make it quite clear and firmly. That's not our job. Our job was to interrogate the information that members of the Assembly saw fit to present to us. That's what the rules made by the National Assembly told and required us to do. We could not go beyond that. It's not in my blood to disregard the law. I live by the law, and that's what I have to do. So let me clear that perception once and for all. It was not our job to call whoever you wanted us to call to help us here. The rules that you made it quite clear, and that's what these volumes are based upon. Thank you.
Former Chief Justice Sandile Ncala just explaining what their mandate was or terms of reference according to what Parliament had wanted them to do as that independent panel. Remember, it was a three-person panel that he was heading. But now let's get some views from civil society groups on what they would like to see happening. I'm joined this hour by Melusi Ncala from Corruption Watch. Melusi, good afternoon. The report is not out yet, so we can't really speculate much about its contents. However, there will be some expectations. You, as a civil society organization, what are you going to be looking for as you read this report tonight, which we understand will be made public?
Good afternoon, Dan, and good afternoon to your viewers. I think what is important for us when it comes to this entire process is that it was done diligently, done transparently, and hence it was quite encouraging to see the handover made by the Chief Justice, and also then to see what the recommendation is, which can be, for all intents and purposes, one of two, right? It's either there's prima facie evidence based on what the National Assembly has presented to have a further inquiry on whether the president should be removed, or there was not sufficient evidence for this. And then following this will be a whole discussion that the National Assembly will have next week.
So is it not possible there could be another option here, or are those the only two? It's either he's got a case to answer or he doesn't, and then case closed.
I mean, we need to bear in mind that there are other parallel investigations that are currently unfolding then. The public protector is still looking at the issues of whether there has been a violation of the ethics code. The police are looking at the criminal aspect of this entire matter. On a lesser extent, the revenue services as well as the Reserve Bank are also looking at issues of ethics or whether the president complied with those. So this is not by any stretch of the imagination, the end of the road of the saga. There are still other outcomes that we need to bear in mind. The only reason I would guess this one holds any major significance in terms of public discourse is because of its implications, because of its political implications going into December.
Yes, and just generally, removing a president, a sitting president, is no easy matter.
No, it isn't. As the Section 89 of the Constitution stipulates, there has to be serious misconduct, serious violation, or some level of incapacity on the person. And then, of course, there needs to be an inquiry following this once the panel has been established to determine whether, there is a case to be heard. And then the inquiry will then make submissions to Parliament again to say, this is our recommendation. And that's when only Parliament can actually vote and say, okay, yes, we believe this warrants a removal or not. And by that time, it has to be a 2/3 majority that decides.
Yeah, so it will come down at that point, if that's the way it's going to go, to the numbers. But just from a corruption watch perspective, what will be the things that you'll be looking at to see whether or not, in any shape or form, as an executive of the Republic, the president might have violated one aspect or so, either of the executive codes or the Constitution?
The president is not, by our understanding, is not supposed to be benefiting from any other stream of income. So he's not supposed to be doing businesses outside his office. The president is supposed to be beyond reproach. And based on the allegations that we have at hand, if there's any truth to them, then the president has a very serious case to answer, to say what really happened. And by his own admission, he has mentioned that the sum that has been touted about by people is far less, but nevertheless, that in itself seems to be some kind of admission that he is involved in business. Now, if you have to look at the ethics code in terms of the executive ethics code, that is not permissible, and there are problems in that, because we all as a people require our president to be focused on the duty of actually governing the country and running the government.
Yeah, I just, referring back as we're going to conclude now, Melusi, just want to get your view there from a Corruption Watch perspective as a civil society organization. Noseview Mapisa Ncala, the Speaker of the National Assembly, reminding us earlier that the panel was set up mainly to make a recommendation to her as the Speaker whether there is sufficient evidence showing that the president committed, one, a serious violation of the Constitution or law, or committed a serious misconduct. The things that you've just mentioned, could they fall under one of those?
Yes, they could possibly fall under those. Even though we need to bear in mind that it's the public protector that's currently looking at the ethics code issue, whether the president has conducted himself in an improper way. But yes, if there was evidence submitted by National Assembly members substantiating these allegations sufficiently enough to say that there's a prima facie case, then definitely that could be the recommendation.
If the recommendation is that he has no case to answer, would this be the end of the road around questions that what actually happened at Phala Farm? Would we then have to wait as a country for the conclusion of the number of other investigations that are being undertaken by the likes of the public protector, as you've just mentioned, by the likes of the Hawks and others?
Yes, we definitely have to wait for those processes to conclude and to hear what the outcomes are in that. But we also need to bear in mind that Parliament will be debating this report next week. So who knows how those deliberations will end.